Welcome everyone to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am Richard, and as you can see by the graphics, this is a continuation of my Cimmerian September, and this is part 2 of the Scarlet Citadel. So when I first recorded on September 7th, my my coverage of the Scarlet Citadel, I had only gone through about the first 2.5 chapters, so roughly half of the story, and my intention was to follow that up with with completing the story, listening to it. I'm working off the audio for this particular story. It's very long, and this story is masterfully narrated by Todd McLaren. As you can tell, it's still coming from this book, so it's still coming from The Coming of Conan the Cimmerian from Del Rey Books, and I also have the audio as well, so that really does help in being able to listen to these classic stories while I'm driving to work, and when I have more leisurely time or it's a shorter story, I can sit at home and relax and read it directly from the book as well. So one other correction. So in the last video on September 7th, I had conflated the two stories that I had covered, and I misstated that Conan actually kills the snake in this in this story, and that's not the case. The snake gets driven off, and I'm going to go into that part here because that comes in chapter 3, and moving forward I will make sure that when I do these longer length stories that I will break them down like much as I'm doing with this one here. So the next story that I'm going to cover is the Queen of the Black Coast, and I might show that in various different ways as well, but that should get me caught up on the date, right? I did have that break in my schedule on September 9th because obviously the passing of James Earl Jones took precedence over everything else, and I wanted to give a remembrance, just an acknowledgement of his impact on what is Conan the Barbarian. I mean, without the 1982 movie, Conan the Cimmerian, Conan the Barbarian, might not be the IP that it is today. So without further ado, let me jump right into my continuation of the Scarlet Citadel. So there's really two parts of this story. There is the part where Conan is captured on the battlefield, and he's very defiant, and then he's thrown in the dungeon, all right, by the wizard or sorcerer Sathalanti, and he's assumed to be left for dead there. That the giant snake Safa will kill him, and Conan managed to escape the grasp of the snake, and one of his captors was actually ended up getting killed by the snake, and Conan slipped away. So Conan is now traveling through these dungeons very much in the dark, and he comes upon a very strange plant, and this plant seems to be sucking the life force out of a captive that it's holding in its clutches. And Conan attacks this plant. He feels a a compelling thing to kill this plant thing, and free this person from the torment. And so he does that. He cuts off cuts off at the stalk, basically this plant creature, and it kind of withers and dies. And the person that he ends up saving is the sorcerer Pelias. And Pelias was Sotholante's rival. And Pelias was actually trapped there in the clutches of of Yathga's roots for 10 years. So Conan actually has heard of this man Pelias, and he's astounded that that Pelias is actually still alive. And so he rescues him from the plant, and they continue on through the dungeon, but they're going to head back to the gates because that's the only way that Pelias knows to go. He says any other passage, and there's a well in this place that Conan had bypassed, and Pelias says, no, all other ways go deeper into basically the pits of hell, as he describes it, and said the best way is to go back to the gate. And so they're making their way back to the gate, and over the time, Pelias is gaining some of his strength back. He's gaining some of his presence back as well. So, and he's going to emanate that presence, which is something I mentioned about Conan earlier on as well. Certain characters in Robert E. Howard's stories carry they have a presence about them that just naturally intimidates anyone that they encounter, especially those that are in potential conflict with with these particular characters. So Conan and Pelias are making their way back to the gate when where Conan was first thrown into these dungeons, and they encounter the snake again. But this time the snake is captured in the gaze of Pelias, and it is through Pelias's his intimidation that the snake slithers off very rapidly and disappears into into the deeper pits of the citadel, and so they're able to move on. They get to the black gate that they were locked behind, and earlier on in the story, Conan had killed a guard, his jailer, on the other side of the gate, and the guy's body is laying there next to the gate, and Pelias recognizes this guy and is kind of mocking how this guy is dead, and yet the gate is still locked and the keys are far off. Hold on one second, I gotta pause this. Okay, sorry about that. I'm back. Potential spam call. So I am, let's go back to here. So there's the body on the other side of the gate. The keys are certainly out of reach, and Conan's like, we're still in this predicament, and Pelias kind of laughs, and he says to the corpse of the jailer, rise up, and he basically raises him from the dead, not bringing him back to life, but making him kind of an animated, zombie-like creature, and then directs the zombie to unlock the door and slide the bolt. and they are able to escape into the Scarlet Citadel proper, not its dungeons any longer, and they eventually make their way to the outside world. Right, so they are outside of the Citadel now, and Conan realizes that his enemy forces are moving on some of his cities, including his capital city back in Aquilonia. And he knows this because Polias, as they were rummaging through Sopholamtes' private quarters, there was a crystal, like a seeing crystal ball kind of object that they could look through, and were made aware of where Conan's enemies were. And so with that knowledge, Conan realized, like, how am I ever going to get out there in time? It's going to take me a week to get there and not be able to thwart the assault. Aquilonia will be lost regardless. Conan also realized that without his being there, Aquilonia is going to fragment into into its petty nobility, seizing control of their own areas first, and then starting to fight over the crown. And the people are going to break apart and start siding with whichever faction seems to be the one that is going to be the most dominant. And actually, I could switch out of here. Whichever one is going to be the most dominant. And once again, it's a reflection of Robert E. Howard's view, the difference between the barbarous, savage lands, primarily of the north, but in some cases of the south, to the tribal, clannish societies versus the supposed civilized societies of the larger countries and kingdoms and such, and how as soon as the king is dead, they automatically fragment into all of these factions vying for power, and there's no sense of true like nationality, for lack of better terms. There's no uniform bond to the country. There's within civilized realm, it's like they will throw themselves into various factions very, very quickly, and vie with the faction that is is deemed to be the most powerful. And so it really is a casting shade at the notion of civilization as being an advancement over the tribalism and clannish natures of the barbarous world. And so that again gets reinforced in the latter part of the Scarlet Citadel story as well. And it is going to be a very common theme that you see in Robert E. Howard's writings for not just Conan the Cimmerian, but some of his other characters as well, whether it be King Kull or Bran McMorn or others. There's just a real disdain that is shown towards civilization. So now I'm going to start shortening this up, because clearly Conan needs to get there fast, and so Polias summons this bat-like, bird-like creature that is going to fly him to his capital city of Tamur, and then Conan is going to eventually downcast literally throwing the guy from the parapets of the palace to his death, 150 feet down to the ground to his death. And then just the mere sight of Conan is going to start to turn the tide. And, within the city itself, and the those that were uprising, are quickly put down. Those that were part of the palace guard or whatever that was siding with trying to quell the loyalists down quickly surrendered and resubmitted. Again, a true sign of the depredation of civilization, immediately pledging legions back to Conan, even though they were working against his loyalists in the process as well. And then Conan is going to go out onto the battlefield once again, collecting a larger army than he had originally, but still much smaller than the invading army of both Cawthon and Ophir. And he is going to go at them with the force that he has assembled. And of course, being King Conan, they are going to begin to pick away at the enemy force and defeat them through tactics and just the will to drive them off. And Conan ends up killing the king of Koth on the battlefield, and Sotholanthi runs away. He's trying to escape, especially when he realizes that it's not just Conan coming after him, although Conan is chasing him down on a horse. But he also realized that Pelias was playing a hand in Conan's return, and so he's petrified of that. And Conan eventually catches up to the fleeing sorcerer, and he lops off his head with a very quick sword stroke. And before anything else could happen, the bird-like creature that Conan had flown in on swoops down and snatches the head of the sorcerer and flies off. And the headless body of Sotholanthi is chasing after its head flying off, and so you just have this closing scene of this a headless body chasing after possibly forever, chasing after its severed head carried off into the into the distance, into the far off place, and thus closes out the story of the Scarlet Citadel. So once again, you have a story set with King Conan being beset by outside either conspirators within and then outside forces that are just trying to do their very best to remove him from being king. And there's a variety of reasons for that. He is still seen as a usurper. He had no bloodline connecting him to the crown. And I think that that's the key problem that they have with him. Even though he was a far more fair ruler over the people, he did not tax them anywhere near what other rulers had previously taxed the people with, and the merchants and whatnot. And yet they still had that desire to remove him because he's an outsider, he's an outlander, and he's not a civilized man, and he would never become a civilized man uh, in the same bent that they're used to, and still seemingly desire to. And the only thing that keeps Conan there is he does feel an obligation to continue rule as much as he actually loathes it, for the weakest amongst the people, because he knows that as soon as he gives up the throne or he's removed from the throne, they're immediately going to be, crushed under the heel of the next king of Aquilonia. So that's the only real reason I can think of, and have been directly mentioned in some of the stories of why Conan does remain king of Aquilonia, even though it's truly not his desire. His desire is to, go out and adventure and to do, new and great things. But he felt that his destiny was to be king. But his destiny and his desire are two different things, and that also comes through the last two stories that I covered. That was in the earlier story, and now I'm slipping my mind which one it was, where he was the king. Oh, the Phoenix on the Sword. So the Phoenix on the Sword, and now this one reiterates that same dilemma that Conan has as being king. So I'm going to leave this one here. We will go to the next series of videos I will do. So for getting caught back up again, so the 10th, the 11th, and possibly the 12th, I'll be looking at Queen of the Black Coast. So it goes back to Conan's earlier piratical years. So he's not king yet. And we'll get into that story. So that's another epic story. I have various different depictions of that story. So I will get my comic books out, and I'm going to go to the original Conan comic books and see when was the first time that story was put out for everyone to take a look at, and see possibly for the first time. So I'm pretty sure that's going to be within the first 25 Marvel comic Conan the Barbarian comics. So that will be the next one coming up, and I should get caught up with the series fairly quickly. You all have a great rest of your day, and as always, I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen or at a convention sometime soon. You all have a great upcoming weekend. Today is Thursday, but upcoming weekend, and I will see you before then anyhow. Take care.